This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. The show's been going to mandate. Get it on. Welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt with Mark Garrigus.
In studio, want you to know that even though today started as a bard, last night the audible called by Gary, I called the audible, Gary Smith took the ball, ran with it, you confirmed.
Yes.
And we are going to do a big show.
Yeah, well, you're in town. You're in the flesh.
I move stuff around because there's a big event tomorrow, and I don't want to miss it.
Oh, yeah. We're having a little,
you know what I just spent
dinner.
the last hour doing? Trying to, I think you and I have talked about this before, that unfortunately in the last 30 years, the word gay, which was a part of my vocabulary growing up and yours, you've been banished. You can't use gay anymore. But there are some times when gay is just perfect. And discussing Paulette's proposed birthday gifts for you, there's no way to have that discussion without invoking the word gay.
No, it's mathematically impossible.
It's totally impossible. How in the world can I look at Paulette when she says, I'm going to buy Adam some sand toys? And I said, beach toys? I said, or an ATM. I mean, or an ATV.
ATV, sure.
And she, because you'd like an ATM, but an ATV. And Santa, I said, she goes, like a Frisbee and shovels. And I said, okay, Sonny would reject that. I can't even imagine what Adam would do. And it's gay. And then she was very offended. But, that's.
I argue you're grandfathered in with gay. Number one, you can say gay. Anyone older than 50, let's see, how old am I? 58 in 1 week can say gay. Okay. Number one. Number two, the problem with using the term gay is not using the term gay. It's the explanation once you've used it. So you go, oh, man, that mountain bike is so gay, or that politician's gay. And then someone goes, hey, what's up? And then you go, no, I don't mean homosexual. I mean lame. And then it gets worse. Yeah, that's the problem. It's the explanation part.
Well, it's apparently you can now queer is appropriate because there was a time when queer was inappropriate.
And also, queer used to just mean weird.
Yeah, and don't queer the deal.
And that guy was acting queerly, like suspiciously. Maybe he was on drugs, and kind of makes you wonder if queer just made its move from sort of old English weird behavior to homosexuality. Like, that guy's queer. Like, he's not like us. He's strange. He's weird. I don't know. I have some tape. I know you have some thoughts. I don't know what's on your mind.
I was just happy to see you.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's why I came. I moved stuff around. I wanted to see you. I felt like the last week we really we had a very good discussion. I wanted to continue it. I just felt like the discussions I've had in the last week. My highlights of the week have been, we had a guest a while back, the Sheriff Villanueva,
right? And
I was with him yesterday.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, we threw him a little thing at the restaurant.
Oh, that's
yesterday.
right.
And it was nice, and I had a nice chat with him. And today, this is dropping today, right, Gary? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so today's election day. If you haven't voted, go vote. And he and I were talking because I have a theory. And I was talking about it yesterday, and then I read somebody who wrote something today which kind of mirrored the theory that he and I were talking about, that today will be an interesting kind of canary in the coal mine for the Democrats, and not just L.A. County that Gary and I talked about, and you and I talk about, and not just California. I think, California, for whatever reason, tends to kind of lead the way by 5-6 years. I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens with the recall in San Francisco of the DA, Chelsea Bowden. What happens with the mayoral race with Rick Caruso? Elon Musk, I think you saw, came out and endorsed Caruso.
Oh, I just saw that he endorsed a candidate, but I didn't read any further. I didn't know he did Caruso.
He came out. Right. He came out and endorsed Caruso, which I thought, of all the races to pick, that's why this guy, for whatever you say about Musk, he is a genius, and you can slam him about this, that, or the other thing, but the guy, he understands that it's a watershed moment for the political parties, because if Alex wins or gets into the runoff, and Caruso wins or gets in the runoff, and if Bowden gets recalled in San Francisco, that really is going to portend course correction. Either the Democrats figure it out that this is we have. The L.A. County Democratic Party has basically become clinically insane, or we're gonna double down, and November is going to be a shit show, the likes of which nobody's seen in 80 years.
Well, you're uniquely qualified to discuss this, because I think what you're talking about is we have in the past, you have these overzealous DAs and their law and order. And, the third strike is a bag of Funyuns, and that's enough to put the guy away for the rest of his natural life. And, there's 15-year-olds being prosecuted as adults, and they're guys that are getting, brought up on having to register with the child sex offender for taking a piss on their front lawn, or having sex with their 16-year-old girlfriend when they were 17 and a half, or whatever it is. And so guys like you, professionally, and then and overzealous cops, and cops using a show of force that is well exceeds the circumstances of the event and all that. And so then we go, enough of that. We don't want any more of that. And some of it has to do with more particulars like bail, cash bail, things like that. But okay. So then you have your laundry list of things you'd like to correct. So the problem then is our way of correcting it is, let's vote in some George Soros-backed, guys that hung out with Sandinistas and Cubans and stuff like that, to come in and do some new style of district attorneying that doesn't involve any of this. And then it turns into a shit show. So I don't think the argument is against reform. It's sort of the application of reform, and what are good ideas and what are bad ideas, because then we do this sweeping thing, and the next thing you know, they're handing out syringes filled with fentanyl, and they're having safe injection zones, and the city turns to shit in 10 minutes, and then we want to recall the guys who we originally elected for reform, but the reform was sort of within the system. It's like, why does the young person of color have to spend an inordinate amount of time for consensual crime, for having a dime bag in the park or something? We all agree we want to fix that, but somehow on the road to attempting to fix that, we have guys that have been arrested 18 times pushing people out into the subway tracks.
It's so funny you frame it in that way, because part of the pushback I've had about George Gascon, who I think had kind of his heart in the right place, that he wanted to see reform, and he's a guy who will talk about data, and I love data. But the fact remains that if you sit, and you and I have talked about this for years, before there was a reform movement, we were doing this show, and I used to quote none other than Eric Younger, who was a Superior Court judge, whose dad was the great Evel Younger, who was Attorney General and didn't make it as governor, but was Attorney General and a DA in L.A. County. And Eric used to say that the possession of cocaine, or the cocaine drop, or possession with intent to sell, was the parking ticket of the Superior Court. And Ira Reiner, I'm going to go way back on DAs, they used to have IRS on the file, which was an Ira Reiner special, where if you had a rock of cocaine, you had mandatory 180 days, all this nonsense. And, it was the Democrats, and it started with this idea that the Democrats didn't want to, we had to be tough on crime because God forbid that you were out toughed on crime by the Republicans. So you started kind of going along with the program. It was the third rail. You had to deal with that. Well, that was nonsense also. As much as it's nonsense to say we're going to just let guys flop out. I mean, I was talking with the sheriff yesterday. I caught one guy in the vestibule in front of the building yesterday who was shooting up, and his excuse was, I filmed him. Gary's seen it. I filmed him as he was sitting there. I said, dude, okay, you're going to shoot up in on my front porch, then I'm going to film you. And
of your workplace.
Yeah, of my workplace. Well, it's still my front porch.
No, I just want to make clear he wasn't in the neighborhood.
Well, yeah. Can you imagine locking you out with the sheriff's deputies?
No, tolerate that.
Never. They're not going to put up with that. But LAPD, they just kind of wave as they go by. This guy's response was, oh, dude, I'm a diabetic. I said, okay, $100 says there's not insulin in there. $100. Well, yeah, it's not insulin. I mean, this is what you're dealing with. Then you go back in the alley, and there's a guy flopped out right now as I drove here. I left the office, flopped out. Yeah, there you go.
Wow, we're looking at it. Yeah.
Gary's got it. That's literally in the front porch of the office. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy flopped out on the apron of the back in Lebanon Alley, which, mind you, this is the city cleaned up for the Summit of Americas, which is going on right across the street. They've put cement pylons on both sides of Figueroa, so you can't get to my office except by walking. The sheriff actually had to badge his way in. And the Summit of Americas, which Biden attended yesterday, and I think Kamala was there. But the point is that we know it's not working,
right?
And it's going to be, if people say no, we want the alternative. We're going to vote Villanueva out. We're going to keep Chessie. Is it Chessie? I always Chessie. It's Chesa. Bowden. If we're going to keep him in and we're going to elect somebody other than Caruso, then have at it. Because to quote you, there's only one way it can go. I'm sitting here. I've been in L.A. I was born in downtown L.A., right up the street at St. Vincent's, and went to law school and practiced there for 40 years. I have watched it. There's only one way that this has gone and can go.
Well, what
Chesa Boudin, by the way.
Chesa Boudin or something in San Francisco DA, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And getting back to him, the one last thing I'd say is I have told George Gascon, L.A. is not San Francisco, and I think the voters will prove it today.
So here's the question: so there's a recall afoot for Gascon. Let me ask you this philosophically. So because. And it's not really an answerable question, but if anyone could, by the way, that never stopped you from answering a question.
It's exactly
You'll
right.
go longer sometimes when there's no answer.
I try to get my sea legs.
But, you talk about, so I'll equate it to something else. So in Los Angeles, gas is $7 a gallon. Now we both got the V8, cars that get 11 miles to the gallon.
Right. And I watch. You turn to the right, the Chevron is there, and it's $7. You turn to the left, and it's like $5.99 at the Arco.
Yeah.
And it's like they're giving away free cheese.
It's Dawn of the Damned over there. I didn't tell you. I saw two women throwing down in the parking lot of the Arco.
Of the Arco. That Arco is God forbid you try to cut the line from making a left on Foothill.
Chick was blocking someone else's car with her body, and she was
no shit.
She was substantial. Next chick got out of the car.
Probably from Crescenta Valley.
There was a full on Donnybrook going on in that parking lot. So what it is the Arco is patronized by folks that are getting on the freeway and heading to Altadena or Torrance or God knows where. The Chevron is the neighborhood, the gentry.
Right.
They're the folks who don't want to throw down in the parking lot, and it's worth $1 a gallon to them to not be confronted in the lot.
The Arco are the people from La Crescenta who've driven down Foothill to buy the gas at the Arco because it's substantially less.
There's a tale of two cities going on 150 feet away from one another, and what people won't do to save 87 cents, and like I said, it's not 31 cents. It's $1 a gallon difference.
It's on a fill up. It's real money. And as you say, those cars, it's like a dance of the devil over there, because when they're making the left on Foothill and the right off of Foothill, and nobody's letting anybody go ahead of each other, and they're flipping each other off, and they scream, and it's wild to watch. I've actually sat and filmed it and sent it to Jake. It's my entertainment in the morning. And watch these people
like
go psycho.
the socias and the townies. And the townies are going at it at the Arco. And like I said, you will get cheaper fuel there, but to what end?
Yeah. I mean, and by the way, that's when you want to pack heat.
I saw 2 women physically throwing down in that parking lot 2 weeks ago when I was out on my rounds. But speaking of fuel and DAs, and so I'll bring this around to the DAs, which is, gas is $7 a gallon, and we were exporting it a couple of years ago, and now we're talking to the worst players in the world and seeing if Iran or OPEC nations will loosen up their pipelines and give us a couple of scraps. And now we're dealing with, we can't deal with Russia anymore, but we're dealing with other characters and players around the world that probably aren't the greatest nations in the world, but now we need their gas. Now,
right, Saudi Arabia, but we've apparently gone all men in black on Khashoggi and getting sawed up into pieces in the Turkish in Istanbul in the embassy.
So we took a strong moral stance against that, but that was until we needed gas, and now we need gas. Right. All right, so some people say, well, Biden, he put an end to the Keystone Pipeline, and he put an end to this project and that project. And then the Biden administration is like, hey, there's plenty of leases open. You guys aren't taking advantage of these leases that we have for drilling, and you're gouging and blah, blah, blah. And what a lot of people who dig a little deeper are saying is when Biden sort of ran his campaign, what you could hear of it, because he didn't do a lot of campaigning, but they'd get up there and they'd have the Democratic event. The
National Convention,
the convention, and or the debates and whatever. And he'd say, no more new drilling on federal ground, and I'm going to put an end to these offshore oil derricks and all, and everyone was trying to one-up each other. Oh, yeah? Well, when I'm in charge, it's all electric all the time. We're getting rid of leaf blowers. We're getting rid of chainsaws. We're going to shut down the Keystone Pipeline. And so once a Democrat got elected, it didn't really matter who, the big petrochemical companies, the big oil companies went like, all right, well, we're not going to do any investment. They're not friendly to what we do. We have a business. They hate, the administration hates the business we're in, and we're not going to do a lot of investing until we can get an administration that might be friendlier.
Well, by the way, there's also absolutely no reason to. I mean, take a look at Buffett, and I don't even know if he's running Berkshire Hathaway anymore, but Berkshire Hathaway has been spending billions betting on Occidental Petroleum and Chevron. And the profits that are being made are just obscene, because they say, that's fine, you don't want us to do this? We'll just hit and rake it in, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, you're making our product more expensive. Now, you then think about how this would apply to a DA. Do criminals, this is my unanswerable question, do they go when a guy like Gascon is voted in, or Boudin is voted in San Francisco, do they go, I like this administration? I got a feeling you'll see it at the border. There's administrations that are like, we're building a wall. You stay in Mexico, Title 42, nobody's coming in here. And it slows immigration down because they get the message that, oh, this isn't a good time
it's interesting
for this. Versus we're tearing the wall down. We're getting rid of stay in Mexico. You can think whatever you want, but the message is sent to the people. Oh, it's time to start walking for the border. We have a group that is friendlier to us. Is there a DA version of that?
Well, I will tell you, the only time I've seen a change in policy kind of in real time is when that trans kid, I say kid because he looked like he's 20, was caught on tape talking to his dad.
Hannah something.
Yeah. Now, when they had that tape, and that tape came out, and he was basically bragging, that is, if you're a progressive / quote-unquote DA, that's your worst nightmare.
Hannah Tubbs, by the way.
Hannah Tubbs. That is exactly, that undercuts kind of one of the basic tenets of your theory is that deterrence, when you're talking about somebody who's in the throes of wanting to go get their next hit of meth or fentanyl or something else, are they making a calculation? Am I better off in California or in this county? Am I better off in LA County than Orange County? And, the kind of liberal line is, no, they don't do that. They're in the throes of addiction. Here you've got a guy who's in the jail talking about the calculation and understanding the lack of consequence. That is a frightening thing, and in my opinion, why there was a reaction to that. Well, the bigger, I think, problem, and I'm not answering your question because I agree with you, it's probably unanswerable. I will tell you, though, I'll shift the prism a little bit. For people who are unhoused, which read that people who are looking for their next hit, knowing they can come to California, they can stay on the beach, they don't want to be housed, they just want to do their drugs, and they want to be left alone outside with kind of very little rules and regulation. That draws people here.
Yeah, well, it's clear. Over 50% of the homeless people are from somewhere else, so it is a draw. And so the regulations and the codes and the statutes make a difference, like they do at the border or like they do at the gas pump or like they do with the homeless situation. Gary, do you want me to Mark, do Alto, and then I'll play some tape.
Alto is a repeat supporter of Reasonable Doubt. Have an account with Coinbase, own Bitcoin, Ethereum, or another cryptocurrency. It's an exciting investment opportunity. But what about taxes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. With Alto Crypto IRA, you can trade crypto like Bitcoin and avoid or defer the taxes. What a great deal. So you want to trade, it goes to zero, you got another 40 years before you have to worry about it. Alto's Crypto IRA is the easy way to get crypto into an IRA. Create an account, only takes a couple of minutes. You can invest with, believe it or not, as little as one $10 bill, no setup charges, secure trading 24/7. So if you're one of these people who's become kind of addicted to the trade, you just go through Alto's integration with Coinbase, 150 plus coins available, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano. Cardano, I always prefer the restaurant, but here you can get the coin. Multiple ways to fund your account. Make a cash money contribution, transfer cash from an existing IRA, or roll over an old 401k. Isn't that right, Gary?
That's right. Ready to take your investments to the next level? Diversify like the pros and trade without tax headlines. Open an Alto IRA, crypto IRA with as little as $10. Just go to altoira.com/doubt. That's ALTOIRA.com/DOUBT. Start investing in cryptocurrency today. Go to altoira.com/doubt.
Well, once in a while, we like to break down the game film.
We do enjoy this.
And I have a pretty long extended dance version of a segment from Hannity. They're talking about January 6th. And it's on everyone's mind because they're going to do a primetime hearing about January 6th. And
it's going to be the day after the election. Imagine that. The day after the primary election, there's going to be. I wonder why that is. That theory I always have about all the days, 365 on the calendar, and you pick one particular day. I wonder why the prime time would be the day after the election. Would there be a deflection, do you think, or is that just a coincidence that of all the days, 365, we're going to do it the day after the primaries?
Yeah, nothing's a coincidence politically. So this is Kash Patel, and he's a former chief of staff for the DOD, Department of Defense, I guess. Yeah. And then there's Christopher Millers, the former acting defense secretary. Now, there's two kind of heads on January 6th. The left says an insurrection, and it was as close as we've come to losing our democracy since Pearl Harbor. Worse.
No, it's worse.
It's worse than Pearl Harbor. It's worse than 9/11, and blah blah blah. And this was Proud Boys and organized, and Trump was motivated the actions, and democracy was hanging by a thread. And then the right does the obligatory, I don't condone this, it was bad. What about all the other rights you didn't seem to care about? They'll work that in at the top, the summer of violence or whatever. And then they go, only one person was killed, and that was a rioter. And the other people who died of pre-existing conditions. And it was never close. You can watch the footage of Chewbacca Man staggering around the halls, and even footage of guards waving them in and stuff like that. You're making
or what's
something.
His name? Ray Epps. Was that his name?
Ray Epps was possibly the FBI informant. Where's he? He's cheering everyone on. How come he's not in a cell somewhere?
Top 10. Then he fell out of the top 10 faster.
Most wanted and. So there's a lot of, but one of the major arguments that the Republicans are making, and so there's the Trump urged them on, and then there's them going, Trump said peacefully protest, march down to the Capitol and peacefully protest. And so there's a kind of a selective editing going on where he said this, but we will exclude that. But one of the main points, and then there were going to be two Republicans on the
committee.
The committee.
It's Liz Cheney and what's his name?
Adam Kinzinger,
right.
I think. But those are two that agree with them. They didn't. Jim Jordan wanted to be on there. They didn't want any part of Jim Jordan. So basically, they said we'll have two Republicans, but we'll have ones who agree with us. And Jim Jordan, and there was another Republican who got bounced off the committee too. They keep saying their argument, and we'll hear it with Hannity, is you guys have put together a committee under the auspices of this never happening again. Like, we need to get to the bottom of what happened to prevent future generations from experiencing this. Except for nobody wants to talk about the part where Trump said a couple of days before the event, let's get the National Guard in here. And Nancy Pelosi and Miriam Bowser, or whoever the mayor of D.C. was, said no. Now, you don't want to talk about that aspect of this event, but that aspect of this event could have prevented this event. And the guy you're blaming for the event was the guy who wanted to bring in the National Guard.
Jim Banks, by the way, is the other Republican you were looking for.
Right, and it was a Jim Jordan and a Jim Banks. So this is that
the Bank of Jordan
argument, and you can take a look at it. We can stop it along the way.
I just have one question, completely off topic. Cash Patel.
Mm-hmm.
Is Cash necessarily a male name, or can it also be a female name?
I don't know. I'm guessing he's of Indian descent. And
right. Well, as having an Indian son-in-law, I guess I'll go ask. But Cash. I'm wondering if Cash is, is it like Pat?
Got to be short for something. And yeah, you're right. Do other cultures have the Pat and the Chris and the Kim?
Yeah.
Cash is generally a boy's name, and it means universe or sky, and is often used as a shorthand for the Sanskrit name Akash.
He's a competent guy, as you'll hear. All right, so we'll lay this out.
Sure.
And so they're talking about their meeting they had with Trump before the event.
My understanding is this. There were 5 of you in the room. President Trump, Mark Meadows, both of you, and General Milley. Is that correct, Mr. Secretary?
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Sean. Hey, first off, if you don't mind, thanks for taking this on. I can't help but think 78 years ago tonight, if we were alive, Cash and I would have been on the front lines. You would have been there along with Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite, taking back Europe from the Nazis. And this is our front line now. So thanks for taking this on and being serious about it. There hasn't been enough serious conversation. And this is an exclusive. First time Cash and I have been on together because we've been separated to make sure there was an appearance of collusion or anything like that. So thanks for taking this on.
Who separated him?
I don't know.
The lawyers tell them they had to be separated?
I don't know. I don't know if it's something official or they just didn't like the optics of it. But
I wonder that, and accused of collusion. That usually means there's a subpoena lurking somewhere.
All right, continue.
So the four of you that I've had an opportunity to interview now confirm that on January 4th in the Oval Office... But hold on.
Can I just say one thing? The part that this is where I wish they could really do better outreach. When you start off on the Crown with Dems ignore key facts in sham January 6th probe.
Sham Patel.
Yeah, Sham Patel.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. We already know where you're
we know where you're headed. And I don't think it's going to be without a bias, but that's just me.
That you heard Donald Trump authorize up to 20,000 troops, Cash Patel, 2 days before January 6th even happened. Tell us about that meeting.
Yeah, it's not one of those. Thanks again, Sean, like Chris said, for having us, especially on D-Day, to talk about this serious matter. It's not one of those meetings you forget. The Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, the Chief of Staff to the President of the United States of America, Mark Meadows, and the President of the United States himself in the Oval Office talking about some of the most serious national security threats we were facing. And then we pivoted to setting up for January 6th, and Mr. Trump unequivocally authorized up to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women for us to utilize should the second part of the law, the requests, come in. But those requests never did, as you highlighted.
Let me be very clear. Both of you said this under oath, under the threat of a penalty of perjury to the committee?
Oh, absolutely, Sean. Yeah. And to be clear, Cash brought it up best. The meeting was one of the serious kind of heavy meetings I've been in, and it was about a foreign threat that was directed towards the United States, which obviously we can't talk to for fear of ended up in jail. And so I kind of want to be clear. The president.
So just to set it up, this is the guy who acted as Secretary of Defense after Mark Esper was fired?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And so both of them have testified in front of the sham committee. Mm-hmm. I'm having a little fun there.
Yes.
But so that probably explains they both were probably lawyered up and told they shouldn't talk to each other, but have now testified.
That's why they haven't been together. All right.
Okay.
Good pick.
It says, hey, one more thing, and we all sat back down and we discussed what was going on January 6th. I don't want to, because I think that's important to bring up so that the opposition doesn't get this idea that this was the purpose of the meeting. The president was doing exactly what I expect the commander-in-chief to do, any commander-in-chief to do. He was looking at the broad threats against the United States, and he brought this up as on his own. We did not bring it up.
Now, that's an interesting point, and if they testify to that. Also, the Crown has now moved to producing made-for-TV, which, by the way, I agree with. I mean, I just pointed out, of all the days to produce this in prime time, why are you doing it the day after the election? Is the election not going to produce results? Are you expecting election results, if you're the Democrats, that you want to kind of divert your attention from or something? You think that might be it? But that's an interesting point. If they both testified that he brought it up, that's a significant fact. That's a fact that they're going to want to empathize.
The meeting was about something else.
Correct.
And then before the meeting ended, he said, oh, and here's this other concern.
Right. That would cut against, here you've got the guys in the room, and if you're, because I've read all kinds of fulminations about what they're going to do with the president. They're closing in on him, the ex-president. But if you've got two guys under oath saying we were there for another significant threat, so significant that it was classified, we couldn't tell you about it. And, oh, by the way, before that meeting ended, he brought this up on his own. We weren't summoned for this. That's a exculpatory fact.
Interesting. All right, continue.
Cash, the only other person in the room was General Milley. Now, I've had a source tell me, and we've been reaching out to his office. Hopefully we'll hear back from him. I don't think he's avoiding us in any way. And that General Milley, I had somebody tell me that he signed a document that attests to the very thing that you and the defense secretary and Mark Meadows and the president have already confirmed. Have you heard of such a memo or memorandum that exists that is in the hands of the January 6th committee?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So let me be clear. Mark Milley has also testified under oath, as of Secretary Miller and myself, and we've always been consistent that the president authorized it. If Mark Milley, it's my belief, had said anything otherwise, that committee, including Adam Schiff, would have leaked that information because it would advance their narrative. Furthermore, the memo you speak of, the National Guard reports in through the chain of command. That is through the Secretary of Defense to the Secretary of the Army. There's a delegation memo that Christopher Miller was smart enough to craft in order to save time so that we would not have to go through bureaucratic gymnastics should the request come in. That memorandum was executed by the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secretary of the Army who controls the National Guard. I hope that memorandum is in the hands of the January 6th committee, along with the slew of email traffic between the offices I just mentioned, outlining and with particularity the request from the President of the United States for up to 20,000 National Guardsmen and the denial of that request by Mayor Bowser and the Capitol Police and other federal agencies.
So that's if there is a email trail, and if Mark Milley did testify, and I believe that he did, and what they're saying probably about, and I'm speculating here, but if he attested to something, is probably because there were certain questions that he did not want to testify to directly, but that because of classified information, because it involved a meeting that had classified information. So what he would do is they would craft a declaration that would be vetted by the people who vet the release under SEPA or things of that nature, the Classified Information Protection Act, and then he would sign that, and that would substitute his testimony in certain discrete areas. So those are all really good facts if they exist. If you're defending or trying to, first of all, if you're defending the president, those would be exculpatory pieces of information, Brady-type information. And second of all, if you're trying to counter the narrative of, as I said, the made-for-TV hearing that just coincidentally happens the day after the election, those are interesting facts.
Well, we'll keep it going.
Documents that a congressional committee of oversight who cares about the truth, those are the documents that should be put forth before the American public, though I doubt they will on Thursday in this Hollywood bonanza that they're attempting to bury the facts.
I want the public to understand this, Mr. Secretary. Once the president makes that authorization, and once that is communicated to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and Mayor Bowser, who wrote down that she denied in writing that she even wanted the guard to be called up, it is not in the president's authority to call up the guard on his own. He can only, as required by law, authorize it, but it's in their jurisdiction, their total call. He has no say in that. Is that correct?
The president could mobilize the National Guard.
I was going to say, yeah, that
by the way,
isn't correct. He's right.
No, that's good. And I always like when people go, let's be clear, this meeting wasn't to discuss the National Guard. It was for something else.
Right.
But at the end, we brought it up where you go, it's specific. And it doesn't sound as biased, when it's
the way that human nature works.
Yes,
right?
Yes. When I would someone would call Loveline and go, I had sex with my best friend's mom, and I'd go, what was she wearing? And she was wearing a bustier with the stiletto heels. I'd go, get the fuck out of here. But when she's like, she had a Steelers jersey on, and I don't think she was wearing underwear. And she was wearing flip-flops, then it's specific.
And it rings true.
But the story isn't pushing the narrative the whole time. And so,
by the way, when they talk about, because you'd have to say to yourself, why do I have the acting secretary meeting with the president and Cash is the deputy there? So obviously they're not there to discuss, something. Or you would assume when they're having a discussion, it would be about classified information generally, right?
Yeah, so he shows that he's authentic when he corrects Hannity here.
And he corrects Hannity here and says, because I was going to jump in, but he did it. You can mobilize it.
You should bounce back 10 seconds or something, Gary, because the problem is we talk for 5 minutes and then we lose our context a little bit. We'll let Hannity just say it again, and then he'll correct him.
By law, authorize it, but it's in their jurisdiction, their total call. He has no say in that. Is that correct?
The president could mobilize the National Guard, but he made the decision to support the local law enforcement and political leaders. So what you said is exactly right. Typically, the governors, I want to highlight, Sean, we reiterated numerous times to all of the cabinet secretaries as well as the political leadership in Washington, D.C., that we would provide, and the president had authorized, any National Guard support or any military support. I want to be clear, that's just not National Guard, any military support that they requested. We got one request from Mayor Bowser, which we fulfilled in full. And
but Mr. Secretary, isn't this consistent with what the president did in the summer of 2020? And we had we had these local authorities butting heads. The president would authorize the use of the Guard. They wouldn't call up the Guard, but he left it in the hands of local authorities in almost every instance.
I wasn't there for that event. I can only speak about the 6th of January and the events leading up to it, and I can say definitively President Trump offered any and all support requested by suitable officials within Washington, D.C.,
federal,
this
guy's
state,
a straight shooter.
Not state.
I was going to say, the caricature that has been made of him, if you sat and watched like we're doing right now, he's not just echoing the party line.
Right, he's saying you speculate about whatever went on in 2020.
And by the way, if he just testified under oath, he's got to understand that they could use anything he's saying now to impeach him later on if he wasn't truthful.
All right, we'll play a little more.
Federal and local.
So, Kash Patel, let me ask you, we're told by the committee chairman, it was reported that Nancy Pelosi is off limits. That means no testimony, no text messages, no emails, nothing from the Sergeant of Arms, nothing from Mayor Bowser. Is it not true that the mayor herself in writing declined the use of the Guard that Trump authorized? Is that true? All of that true?
All of that's true, and that's not how you run a congressional investigation. I know from my days of running the Russiagate investigation. But let's put all this documentation aside, Sean. Let's put the memos and the delegations aside and the authorizations aside and look at the proof this way. Had the president not authorized 20,000 National Guardsmen and women, then when we did employ and deploy and mobilize 15,000 National Guardsmen and women on January 6th, that would have been an unlawful command from the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of the Army, and the General of the National Guard. Do you think we executed an unlawful command? That question is posed to America in the January 6th committee. Of course not. They want it both ways because they want the political narrative to defeat the facts, but it's just not true. We acted appropriately.
The other thing that immediately comes to mind, if as it seems right now, that the Republicans take back the House in November, and there's all of this information they're claiming right now is here. Then the shoe is going to be on the other foot, right? And then it's rather short-sighted, I think, if you're in charge of the House on a very thin reed right now, for you to do a made-for-TV spectacle, knowing, I guess you assume that in 5 months that even if the inevitable happens and the Republicans take the House, that they're not going to just reverse course?
Yeah, I'm assuming that would happen. And then you have to kind of wonder, if you put together a committee to get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th, but you don't want to talk to Nancy Pelosi or the mayor of D.C., then how thorough is this investigation?
Well, and it leads you, I think it just sets you up for even more kind of ongoing scandals, hearings, and everything else. It's very short-sighted, in my opinion.
We have a little more to go, Gary.
Inspector General's report stated, and President Trump had the foresight to issue the authorization for the National Guardsmen and women. Those are the hard facts that a congressional investigation is diluting with their politicization of our national security apparatus.
Let me ask you both. Mr. Secretary, I'll start with you. To me, it's it's commonsensical. If those troops that the president authorized were called up to 20,000 of them, Isn't it pretty easy to conclude that January 6th, as it unfolded, would not have happened? That 20,000 troops would have stopped any breach of the Capitol? So the fact that this is totally and completely being ignored by the committee, to me, speaks volumes. What are your thoughts? Would that have stopped what happened that day? I believe it would have.
Sean, I have a little different view. My firm belief is that if we would have sent even one National Guard troop up the Capitol Hill before the onset of the riot, we would have been accused, President Trump and I and the military and Kash Patel would have been accused of fomenting a coup against the elected officials on Capitol Hill. So I think it's important to recognize that the United States military, there were 10,000 police officers on duty that day. All of our briefings and all of our coordination with them, they said we can handle up to, here's a headline for you.
Yeah.
They said they can handle up to 1 million demonstrators. They're like, we got this. We got this. So we were very comfortable with the request based on their threat assessment of what they can handle.
Once again, I hate to, it sounds like I've completely laid down to get run over here, but that makes a whole lot of sense. Because
if you'd sent the National Guard, Trump had sent. So if Nancy Pelosi said no to the National Guard and Bowser said no to the National Guard and Trump said, I'm sending them anyway, it would have given the optics of a military coup.
There's actually...
Which was an interesting point.
It is a very interesting point to the extent that if Nancy Pelosi, and who knows, but I would assume she would say, of course I said no to the National Guard because we're not going to, that's not something you would do. You wouldn't bring in the National Guard to deal with a domestic disturbance like this or something like the ritual certification of the vote. So if that's the case, and she said no, then that would seem to support exactly what he is saying, the observation. Of course, if we had sent it in, then they would have said we are doing exactly the very thing that she said. So it supports her.
I think there's a little over a minute left. Yeah, this guy's pretty sober.
I have less than a minute.
Go ahead.
I doubt they're going to focus on the president's words that many of you will now peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol so your voices will be heard. We'll give you the last word, Kash Patel. So now this is going to be a Hollywood production with Hollywood creative license to ignore what is clearly the most relevant facts in the case, and Donald Trump authorizing this days earlier. What does it tell you about the committee and about the show that they're going to put on for the American people, missing pertinent information? We have about 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure, Sean. So what they're doing is they're politicizing the national security of our country. They're forcing individuals like me who served for 16 years to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees that should never occur. They're attacking people with political subpoenas and vendettas and then crying about them.
See, I hadn't even watched it, Gary, and I knew there were lawyers and subpoenas involved. You could tell.
Sure.
It doesn't get it. You know what they should do, Sean? They should release every single document they have in their holdings. Chris and I have seen them. We want them out. And above that, they should release every transcript, mine, General Milley's, Secretary Miller's, everybody's transcript to show the American people that we took an oath to abide by the Constitution. We took an oath to testify that day about January 6th. And they can read in black and white what we did and how we acted appropriately and how the president's authorization was unequivocal. They don't want to put that on the front lines, but I'm happy to come on your show and tell the world about it anytime you want.
I like that Kash Patel, man.
Cash. I like that name.
It's got a good name. And he brings it, too.
I am very impressed with some of the points as articulated by the acting secretary. Because some of those ring true in terms of recounting what actually happened. I always make the comment whether somebody is an accurate historian or not, and take some of the cues that you do as well. And those were, I think, an accurate recounting, or at least without doing a cross-examination, looks like somebody who was straight ahead.
Yeah, I found them to be authentic and sober, and I was watching it, but then I thought, well, let's bring it in. And it all makes sense to me, but let's have Mark watch it and, put his Sherlock Holmes hat on and see if he can't pick at it a little bit, as you've done successfully in other situations. And I just wanted to get your take on it.
It's a very interesting take on the things, and I'll tell you, if things are not. If they're not transparent about the investigation, I think it's enormously short-sighted, because come November, it's going to be a whole different ballgame.
Well, you can't make a proclamation that we need a committee to get to the bottom of X, Y, or Z, whether it's an airplane crash or whether it's a breach of the Capitol, and then go, all right, well, the pilot was drunk. Yeah, we're not going there. It's like, oh, well, then what is the committee for?
Right.
And then you find out the committee's working for the airline, and now it seems a little wanky. You know what I mean? And my thing is by all means, put a committee together, and then by all means, let all the information out there and speak to everyone. And that's the part that's made me raise my eyebrow.
And by the way, that's the way it works in most proceedings. You have the ability to have a cross-examination. You got the ability to hear a different viewpoint, and then the synthesis of that antithesis is what gives you a thesis.
All right, let me tell you about my thesis about Mudwater. Many health and wellness brands alienate customers by pretending their products, will get you to lead a perfect life. Mudwater values authenticity over fake marketing. Mudwater Rise, a coffee alternative with 4 adaptogenic mushrooms and Ayurvedic herbs. I hope I said that right.
Did he say it right?
Yeah, Ayurvedic.
Yeah. Okay. 1/7 the caffeine of a cup of coffee, energy and focus without the crash or the anxiety or the jitters. 100% USDA certified, organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, plant-based. Mudwater Rest, it's caffeine-free blend that promotes the state of calm. Made with rooibos, chai, turmeric, cinnamon, and a ton of adaptogens and herbs as well. Rest Starter Kit includes 30 servings. It's a tin with 30 servings in it. USB rechargeable frother. You cannot live without that, people. I'm telling you right now. And USB rechargeable, so much better than the AA battery kind that run out all the time. Free sample of vegan coconut creamer. And if you're into health and you're into focus, then you got to be into Mudwater. Right, Gary?
That's absolutely right. Go to mudwater.com/doubt and use code doubt to get 15% off your first purchase. That's mudwtr.com/DOUBT and use code doubt for 15% off. All orders ship within U.S. and Canada.
Any other stories on your mind, Mark?
This kind of leads us into, I know I'm fixated on this, Peter Navarro getting filed on by the FBI, or getting arrested by the FBI, being filed on by the DOJ. And then I was complaining about it with Gary on Sunday, and then I saw where Dershowitz came out and was talking about what a bad precedent it is. I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think I, independently from Alan, had come up with the same thing. If you are saying, because this was last Friday, if you're saying that Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino are going, we've conclusively decided, we being the DOJ, that we're not going to file criminally, because presumably they were following executive privilege, then how in the world do you parse it and take and file on Navarro when he's asserted executive privilege by the president? And you're saying, no, we don't agree with that assertion. Well, first of all, it's a real problem from just doing a contempt. I mean, they've charged him with a contempt. Well, the problem with a contempt is that there has to be a lawful order. You're not going to base it on contempt of the House. It's got to be contempt. There's got to be you have to be allowed the judicial determination as to whether or not the privilege didn't exist. It doesn't come after you charge somebody. It comes prior to you charging somebody. Trump asserted executive privilege. Biden said, I'm waiving executive privilege because he was the current president. Well, I don't know that we've ever got to a point where that's been decided in a situation where you're now going to file criminal charges based upon that. And then you're going to go and arrest the guy at the airport. Presumably, the first thing I think of, they've told some magistrate, the government's told some magistrate that the guy's fleeing the country, even though he's probably got a round-trip ticket.
Well, most of the pushback from the right has just been the fact that the Roger Stone part. It's like, oh, the FBI shows up at the pre-dawn raid. You know what I mean? Just contact the guy's fucking... And Lori Loughlin, too. Just contact their fucking lawyer and have him walk them in Monday morning to the office. You know?
I mean, what is he... He didn't testify because his boss, the then president, asserted executive privilege. That's like saying, I want my priest to make the decision as to whether or not when I confess to him, or I want my lawyer when I confess to him to make the decision without me. I'm the holder of the privilege. If you're the priest or the client or the person who's talking with the priest, they hold the privilege. So you have to have that determination first before you go and file criminal charges on somebody. I had Gary play Louis Gohmert, who's an ex-judge who should know better. He's bitching and moaning that, and it's become a meme. You can't even lie anymore to the FBI if you're a Republican. No, that's not the issue. The issue here is he wanted to test executive privilege. And obviously there's something there because it was strong enough that they did not bring charges against Meadows or Scavino.
Eric Holder was
Fast and Furious.
Yeah, was in contempt, and they never sent anybody for him. The problem with all these cases is there's always another case on the other side that's equivalent, and nobody sent in the feds to go get the leg shackles out. And I think what you and I are reacting to, which is this kind of scary proposition of whoever's in charge gets to use the FBI like their fucking personal attack dogs.
It's like their security company. When did the FBI become a security company that the reigning political party gets to use? And this goes on both sides of it. For those of you who may not be on my side of the aisle, guess what? It's going to get reversed. And
well, not only that, I think the insidious part is then when they turn on the news, and whether it's the ladies from The View and Sunny Hostra or whomever legal scholar on CNN, and they're cheering it on. That's kind of the weird, insidious part of it.
That's become the media, and I love Sunny. But that's become the media. The media has become, they have become cheerleaders for whatever side, and that is not journalism.
Agreed. All right, let me tell you about Geico. You love to save a little money on your insurance? Of course you do, and who doesn't want a deal? Well, when it comes to great rates on insurance and everything you insure, Geico can help. Insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, RV, even homeowners, condo, or renters coverage as well, and you can save more with special discounts when you get your bundle working at Geico. Plus, easy-to-use Geico mobile app, 24/7 roadside assistance. You switch to Geico. It's a no-brainer. So switch to Geico today. All right, you can go to adamcarolla.com for all the live shows because me and Sonny are coming out to Denver at the Comedy Works South, June 24th, 25th. We'll be there. Sonny, he'll work
Sonny's
the merch. Working the merch table. And
I love it.
Ordered, last time we were there, ordered Surf and Turf in the green room.
Did he really?
At a comedy club.
Did he peel the outside of the pretzel rolls? Or were you giving him tequila shots? I'll have to talk to Sonny about this, or what he orders in the green room.
What do you got, Mark?
Oh, look, the Naya is open at Capri in Southampton. Stop by there. Great restaurant. Greek fare. If you're at the V in Palm Springs, stop by Gigi's for American fare, downtown LA, Engine Company 28 or 10E. And if you're in Grand Central Terminal in New York, Prova Pizza, and opening next week, Dirty Taco, home of the LA Street Taco.
Oh, nice.
Grand Central Terminal.
Has your boy been working on that?
Oh, yeah. That's been Jake has been He's traveled the world to create special salsas.
The greatest. I love it. Yeah, I talked to him about that. All right, so until next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garagos saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.